Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Economic Development meeting on February 19th at 6 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:03? 6:04. Okay. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from 1:15:25.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Third item on the agenda this evening is the privilege of the floor. Do we have anybody here who would like to speak on the privilege of the floor?
I would like to use the privilege of the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Legislator Fred Larson, District 12. I've made the point once or twice, either in the committee or the full legislature, that our 1998 charter that we still operate under, it's our law. And in the charter, as well as our code and our own legislature rules, we are supposed to, and specifically this committee, we are supposed to, by June, come up annually with objectives, goals, and measurements of how we do, how the county government does. It hasn't been done in years. I don't know when it stopped. It doesn't matter. It just has been a long time ago. So I went back and I'm going to hand out the action of our committee, same committee from 2000. So 25 years ago. There's one here for planning and one for economic development, IDA. And what happened then, and for a number of years, sometimes it was called a policy conference. The legislature had an extra meeting in June, I believe. So not the regular meeting, but an extra meeting. They called it a policy conference, or they met just to vote on the goals, objectives, measurements that each legislature committee had established for the departments that they were responsible for. This is what they did for planning and economic development that year. I've given a copy to Mark Geis already this evening, and the representative of the planning. So here's two for you and your seatmate. There's two. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Then I did pass on to, I'm sorry, I did pass on to the chairman, Mr. Harmon, what I called a sample 25-26 economic development goals, objectives, and measurements, just to help get our committee started on making a good faith estimate, a good faith effort to meet the commands of the charter, the code, and that's two for that table. I cannot say that any legislature ever lived up to the intent of that charter in 1998. To go back, our first charter had the election of an executive for the first time in 1974. So there was a charter back in the 70s, but by 98, people felt that the county government should be structured differently, and that gave us the charter we operate under today. I can't say that any legislature fully lived up to the concept of that charter, that the legislature would truly be the policy-making entity of county government, not the county executive and his department heads. Not even by coincidence in making these photocopies, the district attorney, who is independently elected, the district attorney even was required to take part annually in the goals, objectives, and measurements. So the legislature did try. It's hard work, but they tried. And I don't know that I can influence this whole body, but I was hopeful at least the Planning and Economic Development Committee, we'd make a good college try, that by June, we could say to the executive and to his department heads that we're involved in, look, folks, this is what we as independently elected legislators, this is what we believe the objective should be. Whether, if it's more manufacturing jobs, well, how many? And how would we go about doing that? I've already asked, for example, we need the help of planning department. We don't have the expertise here to say that to the county to facilitate the creation of 500 new manufacturing jobs. We don't know how many acres of industrial park land we would need to acquire and develop to do that. But with the help of our planning people, they can help us understand today's manufacturing. If it's 5 jobs an acre, we need 100 acres to have a chance of 500 new jobs. So if we could all make a commitment to work on this, think about it for our March, April, May meeting. By June meeting, hopefully we would put together our own resolution and submit it to the legislature itself, and then if the legislature ratifies what we've done, it goes on to the county executive, and he's supposed to, under the charter, take it into account in preparing his budget for the following year. If we said that we want 100 acres of new industrial park by 2026, well, that costs money, and we'd want that to be in the budget. So this just is a starting point, but it does give us a fighting chance of the legislature being a policy-making body, or at least policy influencing. Tonight we will have a presentation, and we appreciate the presentation and a 25 work plan, but we have had no real input. It's not anybody else's fault, but ours. We've had no real input in whatever the 25 work plan is. I don't think we as a committee have voted on any goals, objectives, or anything to put into that plan. So it all comes from the executive and the administration, and that's not what the 98 charter had in mind. It wasn't supposed to be from the executive down to the legislature. It was supposed to be the legislature down to the district attorney, the county clerk, the county executive. So let's give it a good college try and try to convince people in Mayville that the legislature really does have something to do with establishing policy, not just reacting to resolutions from the executive branch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
Fred, I thank you for putting this together. The majority of it, 1 through 4 at least, looks quantitative. I think prior to confirming these numbers, what we'd like to see would be historical averages of at least 5 years so that we could accurately establish right-sized goals with year-over-year changes. I don't know where we would go to get that information, but I think,
I guess planning is...
being quantitative, I think
we
that's
need
our
their
next
help.
step.
We
Right,
need their
so-
help, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for putting this together.
Fred?
Can I comment?
Absolutely.
This used to be my line of work. So, and you just hit, I really agree with the fact that the legislature ought to get ahead of this process, as outlined in 205 of the Charter, Section C, which is pretty nicely written, which I pulled up again. And by the way, there's a comprehensive plan out there somewhere which this is supposed to, well, come from.
Right.
So that's a starting point. But I don't see, to your question, how we do this without having some good staff work ahead of time, so we in fact have a sound numerical background, both internal financial numbers, but also, physical numbers of what's going on in our areas of responsibility. And if we don't have some dedicated, staffers to help with it, I really doubt that just a committee of old folks are going to get it done properly, and then won't be done properly, and it'll go into disrepute, and that's what happened before, because you didn't have the resources to do it right.
Well, I just want to thank you for bringing light to that, and your addition along with Jamie. It's something we're certainly going to be able to look into. And you said by June, I think we might be able to probably throw something together that would satisfy the masses, as long as we get the numbers that we're going to need, and all the information that's going to be pertinent to any decision or anything going forward.
So, could I suggest that we get together a side meeting on this subject alone?
Absolutely. Sure.
Because, it's a big responsibility to tell the executive what we expect of the executive.
I know his wife. We'll be all set.
Well, okay. I meant the executive
Oh, okay.
as the whole department, not
All
just the
right.
band. I'll take your point of influence as being strong.
You got it.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Absolutely, Mark, go ahead.
And I don't want to get into it now, because we're going to be
Yeah, we have,
presenting in March on the IDA.
Yes, you are.
Partnership for Economic Growth, but, Mr. Larson said, this charter is about county government, about the planning department, not the IDA. The IDA is not county. It's very clear the IDA is not county. The IDA is one that's, trying to create the business parks and, doing loans, doing incentives for projects. It's not really the legislature that should be dictating what those benchmarks should be, because the IDA is not the county.
right.
And we'll get into that more, but certainly one thing we're gonna do tonight with our presentation with planning, which has 3 divisions. And
Absolutely.
we'll talk about what we do and how we do it, and provide some benchmarks. And those are all, I think, fair game.
It is?
But in terms of the IDA, that's something different. And we'll talk about that again.
Thanks for
like I
bringing that,
said.
thanks for bringing that to our attention, Mark, thank you. Okay. Do we have any discussion on the privilege or any discussion? All set? Okay, let's move on to the first resolution, is the calling of a public hearing pursuant to County Law 254 upon proposal to extend the Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District from Midway State Park through Point Chautauqua on the east side of the Chautauqua Lake. So if you guys could please introduce yourselves, I'd appreciate it.
Pierre Chagnon, Chairman of the Legislature,
Okay.
Dave McCoy, County Watershed Coordinator.
and we're going to tag team the first 2 resolutions for you.
Perfect, thank you, gentlemen.
So the first resolution, calling the public hearing for extending the Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District. Like we've talked in the past, several months, this is a process that we're going through to try and complete public sewers around the entirety of Chautauqua Lake. So this is the last section. And the goal is to have us in position to apply for grants to build this section of public sewer. And the application for those grants is expected to be about June 1st. So we have a short period of time to do a lot of work, and tonight we're going to be dealing with 2 of the pieces of the work. The first, this resolution is to call a public hearing. So we reestablished the county sewer agency, and they reviewed a preliminary engineering report as to what the options were for providing public sewers in this area. And they decided that they would like to pursue one of the options. And so the South and Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District contracted, with the permission of the legislature, to have a map and plan report created, which is required for the grant application. And so the map and plan report was reviewed by the county sewer agency and approved unanimously. The same report was reviewed by the South and Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District Board of Directors and approved unanimously. And so now the next step in the process is for the legislature to hold a public hearing on that map and plan report, which hopefully you've all gotten a copy of and did your midnight reading on. I'm sure you find it as fascinating as I do. But the report is well done. The report, as I've said in the past, is conservative. In times of inflation, you don't want to find yourself on the wrong end of the inflation estimates, but this report is prepared with conservative estimates. And the estimated cost to the users is also conservatively estimated, because the estimate is based upon 50% state funding for the capital project. Recent sewer projects in this region have been receiving far more than 50% state funding. One that I'm going to leave unnamed at this point, but in our county, received grant funding for 130% of the capital cost of the project. So, we're optimistic that the user cost will be lower than what is being presented, but we don't want to make promises that we can't stand behind.
Smart move.
And so the reason for the optimism is, number one, the costs that are included in the report are conservative. And number two, the funding estimate is also conservative.
Just one question, actually, well, maybe two. This extension, what is the actual distance that this resolution is going to cover? I know it says from Midway to, but I mean, I'm not from Chautauqua Lake area, so I don't know what the length of that.
It's through Point Chautauqua,
3 miles?
more than 2 miles. It's,
Pardon me?
how many miles?
6.5.
6.5 miles?
I knew he'd have the answer.
Just like that? Those are my question too. And has there been a public hearing already set, or is it something that we need to do?
This resolution sets the public hearing for the March legislature meeting.
Okay, great. Okay.
And at that point, at that public hearing, the engineers would present the findings from the map and plan report for the public and answer any questions that came from the public
Okay.
hearing.
All right, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Do we have any questions, committee? Mr. Larson?
Well, as the oldest person in the room, if you forgive me, the older I get, the more I'm humored by irony. Legislature meeting after legislature meeting, we're accepting state grants for this, that, and the other thing. Tonight, we're hearing this multi-million dollar project conservatively will be half paid for out of state funds, and could be more. And yet, somewhere, every second, third meeting of this legislature, some legislator says something negative about New York State and how high the taxes are. And people leave here for Florida, where there are no income tax. I just see the irony in it. There's no end to the publics and the legislators, the elected people. There's no end to their appetite demanding more money and more money from Albany, but especially upstate, there's no end to criticism of how high the taxes are here. The money comes from somewhere, and I understand, I'm old enough to understand that if there's a grant program and you don't apply for it, and you don't get your fair share, somebody else is. I understand that. But the irony of complaining year after year about New York State and how much it spends and how high the taxes are. But by the way, we want more money for corrections officers. We want more money for schools. We want more money for sewers. I do get a kick out of the irony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks for the input on that. Do we have any concerns or comments on the resolution presented?
Okay.
Seeing none, all those in favor of this resolution?
I look forward to it.
Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, guys.
Number 2.
Number 2, resolution, recommendation to progress the Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District Extension Phase 3 project and establish Chautauqua County as the lead agency.
Yeah, these resolutions go together like peas and carrots. Pierre talked to you about what the project is really about, the need for the public hearing. Because we're doing this expediently, we also want to undertake the New York State Environmental Quality Review at the same time. We filed to establish lead agency. Lead agency is really the sheriff through the seeker process. And we've typed this as a type 1 action, which requires a long environmental assessment form.
Okay.
Those have been completed. We're here to you tonight to ask that you concur with the making the county the lead agency.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Do we have any questions, concerns, committee, on the resolution proposed? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All those opposed? Carried.
Another step in the process.
Thank you.
Great, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Pierre, for your... This is just one, I think, right here, yeah. Okay, resolution number 3 is to amend the 2025 budget occupancy tax funded projects. And you can...
All right, good evening, Sam Zafoto, Deputy Director of Finance.
Got it?
Dave McCoy, Watershed Coordinator.
Nate Aldrich, Economic Development Coordinator.
All right, so this resolution, in working with the department, was to identify the projects that were funded in the 2024 budget for occupancy tax that had not been completed or basically started due to the permitting or other delays, that an expense accrual would not have been proper. So this is basically moving that expense forward into 2025 to actually complete these projects, finish the contract amendment, and move forward with these projects as we initially contracted them.
Okay.
Do you see any pricing changes from 2024 to 2025 that would affect this?
Your existing projects that we're just carrying forward to.
We have a full slate of projects lined up for 2024 with really 3 rounds of occupancy tax program on the 2% side. Fortunately, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has had a lot of new people. They're not as expedient with the reviews as what we'd like. And honestly, we struggle sometimes to get these contracts out to our stakeholders so they can get to work early on them. So culmination of a couple of things, really with just a few, 9 that we have here, I think we've done reasonably well.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman,
John?
I think Jamie was asking the contractors that are doing the physical work, do you see any big change in pricing, labor, or material costs? No. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the resolution, I don't think makes it obvious in plain language. It appears all of these projects are from the 2% occupancy tax for water-related matters. Is that true?
All but one, really. One is funded by 3%, and that would be the Lake Erie sediment assessments.
That's the last one on the
Yep.
resolution, I see. So,
Lake Erie 7, that came out of the 3% occupancy tax.
Yes.
2 of the members of the committee now are legislators that represent the city of Jamestown. We do have the Chautauqua Lake Outlet, and we do have riverfront above the Warner Dam. And none of these 9 projects are in the city of Jamestown. I don't think there were any projects beyond these 9 that were in the city of Jamestown. Is that fair
That's correct.
observation?
That's correct.
So, obviously, I don't know how Legislator Dickey feels, but we have a lot of wetlands and water in Jamestown above the Warner Dam. And whether entities in Jamestown are not aware that they are eligible or may be eligible for the 2% water tax, occupancy tax or what, it just seems odd that none of the money, pardon the expression, flows into projects in the city of Jamestown? Is there a lack of understanding by interested groups in the city that this funding exists?
I don't think so. We've actually funded some projects on the Riverwalk for the 2%. So folks who should know, do know.
But you have to ask to receive, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
We're typically oversubscribed by about 400%. So we do get a lot of applications. A lot of them we can't fund.
Thank you.
Thanks, David, for that.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead, John.
Maybe these, our leadership table can just clarify for me. I know a substantial amount of money has been spent on the Chattaquin River, removal of debris, trees, stream bank stabilization. How was that funded? Because some of that stuff was within the city of Jamestown.
This year, because of and last year, because of the ARPA funding, we were able to take on some projects down below.
So they're different then? The funding is different? Okay.
Yes, from ARPA to the occupancy tax.
The city of Jamestown had committed some of their own ARPA funding as well, and we'll get into it next month, but we've also helped the city receive over $2 million in grant funding to activate the basin behind the comedy center, so. there is a lot
And
going
I
on.
see the Conservancy is involved with that, but again, that's additional state funding that is possibly being managed by county planning, or county planning is involved. It's just not coming from this pot of money or this source of revenue.
I would say we're involved. That particular project is being spearheaded by Twan leaders at CWC with some state money and the city of Jamestown money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And just to clarify, I had already asked about that for the city of Jamestown and spoke with the mayor and as well as the chairman here regarding that. And I think you're going to bring something next month
Right.
to the meeting as well.
Thank you, Tamara. Do we have any more questions or concerns for our guests?
Nope.
Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, this is carried. Thank you. Resolution number 4 is to amend the 2025 budget to replenish the lake maintenance fund.
Yes, so this 2024 was the first year that we had a $500,000 lake fund in the watershed. So as we prepared the 2025 budget, we included in it the balance we expected to use by the end of '24, which was that exact number of $149,500. So we included that amount in the budget with the idea being that the unspent amount, we would come back in February once we had a firm number, do this resolution, and then make that again another $500,000 as needed for 2025, and that is what this resolution is for.
Looks pretty straightforward to me. I don't have any questions. Do we have any questions? Committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, please, sir.
if I understand correctly, so the 500,000 that's been referenced here was actually county funds?
Yes.
County budget, county funds, not
That's correct.
state, not federal,
That is correct.
county funds. When we can ask our friends in the planning department as this committee tries to set some objectives, goals, and measurements by June, here's a concept that could very well be expanded to our acquisition and development of future industrial parks, business parks, that it would be just as easy to set aside $500,000 a year for the acquisition and development of business industrial parks as it is to set aside $500,000 a year for a lake maintenance fund. Then the county would be in a position to either on its own or through its industrial development agency to go out and acquire land within that budgeted amount. So this seems to me is possibly a good model for what we would do in the 26 budget to start having a designated account of county money, not federal, not state, but our own stake in being ready to do what we need to do to have economic development more successful. So this sounds like a good model, and I'm happy to vote for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Greg, for that. Do we have any more concerns or questions on the resolution presented? All those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, carried. Resolution number 5 is to amend the 2024 budget for year-end reconciliations, planning, and economic development.
Yep, so this final one, as many of you know, we did have in the 2024 budget a vacancy contingent savings that was spread across the county. In this department, they did not have vacancies, but the savings was budgeted in there, so they obviously would have exceeded their budget. However, they are able to self-balance within their own personal services and employee benefits accounts. But really, this relates to that vacancy savings being included in their budget and a small overage in the watershed admin, which relates to a retiree surcharge.
Okay. Again, pretty straightforward. Do you have any questions or concerns, committee, on the resolution presented? All those in favor of the resolution presented?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, this is carried. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. The last, well, number 6 on the agenda tonight is a discussion of the Department of Planning and Development 2024 accomplishments and the 2025 goals and objectives by Mark Geis, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. Okay. Whenever you-
Hi, I'm Mark Geis. I'm the Deputy County Executive for Economic Development.
Nate Aldrich, Economic Development Coordinator.
Dave McCoy, County Watershed Coordinator.
And Rebecca Worster, Planning Coordinator.
So thank you for,
Thanks for being here.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you for giving us the time to talk about our accomplishments in 2024 and our goals for 2025 through our work plan. I'm going to, the agenda, so I'm going to sort of just give an overview and some introductions. But then I'm going to kick it over to Rebecca, and she's going to talk about the planning division, and then Nate's going to talk about the economic development division, and then Dave's going to talk about watershed. We're also going to provide, like I said earlier, we're going to provide benchmarks for each one of these departments' goals, and things that we think that we should be striving for and that we can achieve. If you can hold your questions till the end, we'd really appreciate it, because a lot of times we find out that we answer those questions sometimes, and somebody maybe asks it too early. Wait till the end, write it down, and we'll be glad to answer your questions at the end.
We can handle that, I believe.
Okay.
You handle it,
Yeah,
right?
all right, cool, thanks. Next one. So I just wanted to give sort of an idea of, how we sort of all relate. Our whole economic development team is Department of Planning and Development, right, us. And then we've got the IDA over here. Now, we do common things. We work together, of course. And then we have the Partnership for Economic Growth. And the Partnership for Economic Growth is really a subcomponent of the IDA. It's under its 501c3 under CRITIC. So it does a lot of other things that, this was newly created 5-6 years ago, a public-private partnership. But just real quick, sort of high level, the Department of Planning, we develop plans, and we work on zoning and help municipalities with zoning. We advance development through planning. We administer the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, which is mandated. We administer the County Planning Board, which is mandated. We administer the occupancy tax, both the 2% and the 3%. Through the watershed, we protect and enhance the watershed. And another big thing that we've been doing a lot of is developing trails. And there's a lot more, but that's sort of high level. And then you can see in the partnership, again, and we're going to talk about this next month. So we do, in a nutshell, the partnership really works with, we're using really foundation funding coming from Ralph Wilson and local foundations. We've got a partnership of about 110 economic development stakeholders across the county. We have 5 different work groups. We help municipalities with technical assistance, helping put together grants and
developing projects and providing leverage funding to go after state money, that kind of stuff. And of course, the IDA is about creating and retaining jobs, shovel-ready sites. We do a lot of grants, business incentives through, our pilot program, low-interest loans, bond financing. So that's just sort of in a nutshell. But we all sort of, we're one team, and we do have crossover. So next slide. So right here is our team. Of course, I manage the department. Dave McCoy manages the watershed division. Nate Aldrich and Stephanie Nick are really involved with the economic development division, the occupancy tax, the 3% occupancy tax, et cetera. And then we have Rebecca, oversees the division of planning, and she has Emma Cook, Lauren Sharp, Courtney Domps, who are all currently junior planners, but they're going to be senior planners soon. And then we have Barb Molnar, who is our accounts clerk. She manages all the contracts and really does a good job of making sure that we're doing everything we need to do. One thing I did want to say about this team is, there's not been this kind of stability for a long time in the planning department. There was a time when, and I've been involved for a while, there was a time when there was 5 different planners over 7 years. They would come in, they'd stay a year or two, cut their teeth, learn the tools of the trade, and then they jump out and go into the private sector where they make twice as much money. And I feel good about the fact that we've been able to create a culture that they've stuck around, and we've got stability. So it's a really, really strong team, and I'm proud of that. Top 10 goals and initiatives. I'm going to read these really quickly so that I can kick it over. Administers and support mandatory projects, boards, and committees. I talked about some of those. Support municipalities. We're doing tours. Expand department learning opportunities. We're really encouraging our staff to go to conferences, mingle with their peers, learn the new tricks of the trade, etc. Complete, continue, and begin plans and studies. We don't want to do too much of that, right? We want to implement the studies that we already have on the books, but when it's necessary and we're sort of compelled to do so, we do develop studies that need to be done. We've done a lot of grant writing over the years, and we've tapped into a lot of state and federal monies. Improve project marketing, marketing the department and projects. We really need to get the word out that we're who we are and what we do. Make progress on the B2CI trail. That's the trail that we've been working on for years. We have all these different segments complete, but now we're going to try to do the whole thing in one shot, which is from Barcelona Harbor to Chautauqua Institution. Rebecca will talk about that. Support community planning projects, continue to advance economic development priorities, and lead cutting-edge watershed protection and development. So those are sort of high-level our goals and initiatives. And now I'm going to kick it over to Rebecca to talk about planning in more detail.
Thanks, Mark. So we're going to start each section off with some of our top benchmarks for 2025, and Mark just kind of touched on a few, but I'll get into the details. One of our top benchmarks is to really complete some plans and studies that we're working through. We've been working on 8 Northern Chautauqua County local waterfront revitalization plans. We want to get that draft form this year. We want to begin our countywide resiliency plan, complete the Vineyard Drive Streets strategy, and begin the Barcelona to Chautauqua plan update. And I'll get into these a little more. Begin planning for Ag District 8's 10-year review. Lauren Sharp did a great job with Ag District 8's 8-year review last year, and we'll most likely start towards the end of this year, the 10-year review, and continue to work towards implementing our Ag plan. Writing at least 3 grants to help get projects implemented. We've got some that we're currently working on right now through the IIJA County Infrastructure Grant, and then CFAs come up in May, so I'm sure we'll have some grant applications there. Visit 8 municipalities through our monthly municipal tours. That's in addition to any time a municipality needs to meet with us. Of course, we're going to go and meet with them, but this is really getting us out into the county, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then implement 4 murals across Chautauqua County in partnership with the Partnership for Economic Growth. We are going to be rolling out a public art program, so we're excited to talk about that. I'm not going to get into the details of the next 3 pages, but you can review this, and then it's also in our work plan, the specifics on the projects, our notable accomplishments, and our 2025 benchmarks, because the next 10 slides go into detail on some of these projects. So I'm just going to skip past these 3. There's a lot to take in, but these slides really, I'll tell the story of pretty much all of those projects. So as I mentioned, in 2023, we started a new program to get out to the communities. There's 42 municipalities in our county, and we sit behind a desk a lot of the time, and we know our county, but we really, really wanted to get to know our municipal officials and see them, see the community, see the good things that are happening, but also see the challenges that our municipalities are facing as well. So we've seen a lot of improvement in the connection that we've had with our municipal officials in getting out different programs, or hey, there's this grant opportunity you should really look into. They're really leaning on us now when we meet with them. They know our faces, they know who we are, and we have a really great working relationship. In 2023, we had 10 that we visited. Last year, we had 8. We'll do another 8 this year and just continue that initiative. And like I said, that's in addition to any time any municipality needs us to come out. Lauren Sharp really does an amazing job as our administrator and manager of the Ag Farmland Protection Board. She works with the board on notice of intents that are specific to reviewing any projects that are receiving state funding in our ag districts. We have 4 ag districts, about 390,000, probably a little more than that, of acreage in those districts. She really does a great job in reviewing those projects with the board, writing and submitting the board's comments to the state. Also does our ag district reviews. So every year we have an inclusion period in January where people can submit parcels to be included in the ag districts. And then during the 8-year review process, property owners can add or remove property from the agricultural district. So that process is a lot, and she does a wonderful job with making sure that landowners are engaged, mapping, writing up this plans, keeping our ag board in the loop on that.
I just want to add, it's state mandated.
Yes.
So this is something we have to do.
And then ultimately, our ag development enhancement strategy helps guide us, and that was updated in 2022. Lauren works with Cornell Cooperative Extension, and we have a small steering committee that meets quarterly to look at, there's over 80 plus recommendations in the plan, so we kind of prioritize those recommendations and look at how we can implement those projects. Okay. She also administers our snowmobile program, which is a grant-funded program that includes a lot of work, so I just wanted to acknowledge that too. She does a great job. Our planning board is administered by Courtney Domps, our planner. She does a really great job as well. Again, it's an advisory board that is mandated, that the board reviews any zoning referrals called 239 reviews. Those are specific to any planning or development projects that are within 500 feet of municipal boundaries, county and state roads, right-of-ways, ag districts, county or state parks, and county and state lands to determine if there's a countywide or intermunicipal concern. So every month, there's a review of what comes in through the municipalities. Code enforcement officers submit an application if it is within the boundary of the 500 feet. And then the county planning board also reviews our capital projects, and that will be coming up shortly. The department heads will be submitting applications. We work hand in hand with the finance department on that. They'll be submitting applications at the end of March, and then we coordinate that review with our county planning board to ultimately give their recommendations to the county executive and to the legislature.
That's a big lift.
It is. It is.
That big fat thing, it takes a lot of reviewing all the department heads with all their requests and putting that together, ranking it, putting together that pamphlet that you all, or that brochure really that you all look at to make those decisions.
One of the plans that I mentioned is an 8-part plan, I'd say, or specifically 8 plans. Back in 2015, Phase 1 began, and it was one regional plan to develop a waterfront plan for 10 municipalities along Lake Erie. We called it the Northern Chautauqua Local Waterfront Revitalization Plan. It is through the Department of State, New York State Department of State. Unfortunately, in 2021, the state changed the rules and required us to split up the plans by municipality. We were able to get the village and town of Westfield to be one combined plan, as well as the village of Silver Creek and the town of Hanover to be one plan. But we are currently in the middle of that process. So ultimately, we said we needed more money to move forward with implementing 8 plans instead of 1. So we were able to get grant funding to move forward with that. We are working with Ingalls Planning, and like I said, we're right in the middle of that, really looking at the inventory, boundaries of the waterfront, the policies, specific projects within the waterfront boundary, consistency review, federal state review, and then adoption of the plan. And it's really a guiding document for your waterfront that requires state and federal consistency with the plan, as well as one of the biggest benefits is grant funding opportunities. So projects within your plan are eligible for the state's local waterfront revitalization project funding. We've been doing a lot in the housing realm as well. Last year, we finalized the countywide housing market and development plan. That plan ultimately included over 80 recommendations. We partnered with the CPEG, the partnership, and their housing work group to really help guide the planning process. Then we ultimately prioritize the top 10 recommendations, and now we're working on implementing those recommendations. So some of those include our housing site inventory. So we've broken up that into 3 different categories: identifying vacant, underutilized, or infill sites for housing, housing that could go on 1 to 5 acres, and then housing for 5+ acre, housing developments for 5+ acres that would make sense. So we're really working internally on that, as well as sharing that with our work groups and our different development directors in the city of Dunkirk and city of Jamestown. We're also participating in the City of Jamestown's developer forum that they'll be holding in the spring, but we'd also like to have a countywide forum to bring developers to the county and show some specific priority sites that might be good for development. In addition to that, we want to produce some marketing materials for developers. So that plan is like 100+ document, but a big piece is that the key housing data within it. So we're going to pull out and highlight those key data points, the needs that the county has for housing, identifying the different types of housing that's needed, highlighting the quality of life in Chautauqua County. Why should you come develop in the county? Include an incentives package, incentive sheet that we can be offering, as well as a spec sheet that we can specifically put for marketing specific housing development sites.
Can I just mention too, that we've made a lot of progress on the housing side, and I don't know how many of you are aware of the projects that are going on in the old Welch's building in Westfield. That's 24 units, I believe. Regan has two projects in Dunkirk, right? Were you gonna talk about this?
I was.
Okay, go. I just want to make sure that, I didn't want people to leave
you're
thinking that we, okay,
Yes.
we're talking about it, but go
No,
ahead,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'll get to that in 1 second, Mark.
I'm sorry.
Affordable housing fact sheet, we're working on understanding that affordable housing is not Section 8 is really important, and I think that it's good to have that fact sheet available for municipal officials and for others to understand that. County Infrastructure Grant Program, the state currently has grant funding available for infrastructure projects related to furthering housing development. So we're working with a couple housing developers that are in the works on specific infrastructure grant requests that we can make for that funding to move some of those projects forward. And then ultimately a pro-housing communities program is through New York State HCR, Housing and Community Renewal Agency, and the state is really requiring municipalities become pro-housing communities to access some of that grant funding. So there's steps in the process on how to become a pro-housing community, and we are working with a few municipalities on getting that certification. We have a fact sheet and a process on how to do that. And then, as Mark stated, you're good. We're making a lot of progress in the housing development world. As Mark said, Silver Creek School is 54 units. Gateway Lofts, 110 units. The Welch's building is 45 units. We've got the Macaroni building and Bank building in Dunkirk, which are about 16 units. The possibility of Faulkner site being redeveloped. Regan Development is 78 units in Dunkirk, and then a couple other Dunkirk sites, a possible Finley Lake site. So there are a lot of housing projects in the works right now, and we're doing our best to help move those along whatever way we can help, and I think that's really important to note.
It's like 400 something.
Yeah, almost
units.
400
Yeah.
units, yep. Countywide resiliency plan, I won't spend too much on this. It's really building off our hazard mitigation plan and then identifying specific projects related to flooding, erosion, possible land acquisition, conservation projects. We're waiting on our grant contract with the state to move forward with this plan. Trail development, we're doing a lot in the trails and recreation world. Specifically, we were really excited last year to unveil the countywide trails map. If you haven't checked it out, it's chqtrails.com or chqtrails.org. It's an interactive map with all of our different trail user groups, except minus the snowmobiles. They have their own map. And then we have an Avenza mobile application that you can utilize, as well as printing off physical maps as well. We have the Barcelona Chautauqua Institution Trail, which a couple years ago we were approved for capital projects, through capital projects funding to move forward with updating the 2013 plan. There's been quite a few changes in property ownership, and easements have been challenging, so we're looking at the plan again from a high level and ultimately getting updated cost estimates and reroute options to move forward with trying to bring this to the finish line and get the trail opened. And then lastly, the Friends of Chautauqua County Greenway have been meeting the past 3 or 4 years now. In 2024, there were regular meetings, and we continue to meet. There will be a new memo of understanding and memo of agreement that will be signed to continue the group. The group is planning on a Chautauqua County's Trails Day this June, so more to come on that, but a lot of excitement in the trails world. And I think it's important to note that Jacob Bodway, he's our trails coordinator through the partnership. He's brought in over $800,000 in funding for the Overland Trails improvements. He's made a lot of great improvements to those trails. And then our Friends group really has brought in over $1 million for the different trails through the Rails to Trails, the Watershed Conservancy, the equestrian trails, Boutwell Hill Ski Club, and the mountain biking groups. So a lot of improvements in our recreation.
If I can just make one comment about that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all sort of working in their own silos.
Yeah.
And they have so much commonality, and they use, a lot of times they use the same trails and all this stuff, so we really pull them all together under one group. And they meet monthly, and they talk about opportunities, they collaborate. It just makes a lot of sense.
Good thing.
Yeah.
I like it.
We have an internal complete streets work group that we kind of lead in our departments. We also have the Department of Public Facilities and the Health Department included in our complete streets work group. Last year, the Baker Street extension in the city of Jamestown was completed as one of those projects that was funded. This year, we're really excited about the Vineyard Miller Fillmore Drive complete streets study being completed. That includes bike lanes, pedestrian improvements. When you think about coming into the Dunkirk-Fredonia area and getting off of the 90, most people will take a left or right to get to those municipalities, but we want to create a corridor that's accessible and beautified and more walkable and friendly for college students, for our low-income population, for people that don't drive. So bike lanes and other amenities are looking at improvements along that corridor to County Road. So we've been working with Watts Engineering on that. And then we have a couple interesting pilot projects that we're working on, like this one pictured here is in the village of Fredonia, Water Street. It's right at a pretty publicly trafficked area that's you have a couple big parking lots in the back. A lot of people moving back and forth, so a crosswalk, the village had said, would be a great improvement to this section. We're working on kind of an artistic bump out as well, and excited to implement that this summer. Broadband, so a little background on broadband development. In 2024, some ARPA funding, $1 million was allocated to the IDA, but we've been working hand in hand together on this project. That we hired ECC consultants to really dive into identifying all underserved and unserved locations in the county. Based on that, we divided the county into 4 quadrants and developed a request for proposals to internet service providers to tell us how much it would cost to connect and serve those locations. We received 3 proposals, and DFT was awarded for Zone 3 of that mapping location. It was
orange.
In the orange, yep. 385 locations. This upcoming year, or this year, Connect All, New York State's Connect All office offered a grant opportunity for a deployment program for internet service providers to apply for grant funding for, and so far we know 2 internet service providers have applied to connect approximately 2,500 locations. So I think based on that award, we'll probably reassess how many locations have been provided service and then kind of go back to the drawing table to see if there's other funding opportunities.
Yeah, originally we were allocated 2.5 million and we returned 1.5 of that. And the million was really to contract with DFT and then work with ECC as our consultant. But Connect All has a grant program, and you know, between the funding that the internet service provider has to kick in, I think it's 25%, and the Connect All, we should be able to get most, if not all, the rest of the coverage in the county. So feeling pretty good about that.
And then lastly, as I mentioned, we did end up partnering with the Partnership for Economic Growth to implement a public art program through some placemaking funding, and then we're also applying through local foundations for funding to move forward with 4 murals across the county. You know, public art and placemaking really go hand in hand with economic development. You want to enhance those public spaces to draw tourism and investment to your communities, and we're really excited to implement these 4 mural projects, and more to come on that. We're going to be unveiling that program very shortly, but we're excited about it, and also excited to have kind of a digital map that highlights all of our murals across the county, as well as these 4 new ones, to kind of promote some tourism in public art and murals, as well as offer an apprenticeship program to those that are interested in learning how to do their own murals. So we hope to take those people that are learning and be able to do murals in the future. And that's it from the planning side. Thank you.
Next up is Nate Aldrich to talk about economic development.
So before I go through this, just to reiterate what Mark already indicated, whereas, you know, next month in March, we'll be back to really do an in-depth update on IDA and Partnership for Economic Growth projects. What we're covering here tonight in economic development is really the Division of Economic Development within the Planning and Development Department, obviously. But just know that there's a lot of, as Mark already mentioned, crossover and collaboration with the entire team, and a lot of the economic development projects just so happen to be implemented via those 2 organizations. So there's plenty more to see next month. But just running through here, in terms of our benchmarks, again,
responsibly managing approximately 40 economic development-related contracts, and I'll get into some details on the next slide. Fund a minimum of 10 competitive 3% grant applications, our tourism product development grant program. Work in partnership with COI's economic development arm, CODI, Chautauqua Opportunities for Development Incorporated, on the Microenterprise Assistance Program. Again, the county, our department's the applicant, but they administer that program on behalf of us, and that's forgivable loan funding for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Apply for at least 2 OCR grants to assist low-income businesses with job creation, up to $15,000 per new FTE created. And then manage all the remaining ARPA projects that we're close to closing out in the next year or two. So Stephanie Nick in the back is a special projects coordinator that works with me in the department. Her, along with our finance department and departmental account clerk, do a great job on managing those 40 or so contracts I mentioned. Again, we have 7 community contracts in 24, 1 added this year for 8 and 25. That's county funding that the legislature allocates to organizations like the Ag and Fair Association, the Small Business Development Center at JCC, Cornell Cooperative Extension, the IDA, and other organizations. And it's really not just processing a contract and payments. A lot goes into negotiating terms, reviewing deliverables, holding those vendors accountable with those county funding. On the 3% program in particularly, we've been fortunate to see that fund grow typically each year for the last several years due to our tourism economy increasing. So we fund both direct allocations to agencies as well as a competitive grant program, and we've been able to slowly enhance the amount for grants as well as the allocations as that fund has grown. The OCR CDBG grants, again, we received last year $200,000. Stephanie took the lead on that application, working with CODI to replenish that fund. We'll have another year of that funding. We did 2 grants in 24, and we hope to do at least 5, if not more, this year. Again, we also hope to apply for at least 2 OCR Community Development Business Assistance grants, as I already mentioned. We have a slide on the white end, so I'll gloss over that for now. Again, ARPA projects, our department's been very busy the last 4 years or so, and not only helping the county executive and the legislature to develop and implement that process, but we have at least 10 projects within the department, several of those economic development related. Continue to monitor those ongoing projects and manage those contracts. And then again, we'll get into this next month. Half of our presentation in March will focus on the Partnership for Economic Growth and everything we're doing under that umbrella. Next slide. You know, we're focused a lot in partnership with the IDA on site infrastructure development. That's both brownfield and greenfield development. I'll touch more on the brownfield stuff we have going on because we'll provide, again, a detailed presentation on efforts to develop the Ripley site and Mason shovel-ready site next month. In particular on brownfields, we've seen some successes. Last year, we were awarded a $180,000 grant through Department of State to do really just additional brownfield planning, honing in on our inventory of known and suspected brownfields, doing some evaluation of key sites. So that takes a while to get that state grant contract in place, but hopefully by the end of this year, we'll kickstart that project. We also applied for $500,000 in EPA funding for Phase 1, Phase 2 environmental site assessments as well as asbestos surveys. We applied in November, but won't hear until April if we're successful with that. And again, our department also assisted the IDA and helped fund the launch of a new brownfield revolving loan fund to fund cleanup efforts in particular. And we're proud to say the IDA did its first loan within the last couple of months to assist, as Rebecca mentioned, Stell's Gateway Lofts project in Jamestown, 110-unit, $60+ million project. We're helping with a cleanup component of that project to ultimately help getting over the finish line. And we have approximately $350,000 left to do additional loans, and we'll try to recapitalize that as additional loans are made. Rebecca mentioned we'll be partnering this year with the City of Jamestown on a developer forum or showcase. We also want to do, as she already mentioned, countywide developer forum focused not only on housing but other mixed-use opportunities in our downtowns as well as other sites throughout the county. And we also kicked off, or will be kicking off soon, the Chattacoin River Brownfield Opportunity Area pre-development activities project. We have about $225,000. We were awarded funding in 2023 from Department of State to focus on 5 key sites to queue up redevelopment opportunities, commercial investment, mixed-use investment along the Chattacoin River in downtown Jamestown in partnership with the city, BPU, and others. We continue to work on the NRG facility in Dunkirk, working closely with Vince DeJoy in the city, as well as other partners like NYSERDA. We were awarded some NYSERDA funds a couple years ago, and we'll be wrapping that process up within the next month. And we'll be hosting a stakeholder presentation in March. We'll unveil additional pre-development activities that was funded through that process, as well as talk about next steps with engaging NRG and ultimately reuse that benefits the city. And then we've done a lot. Stephanie again and Lauren and others in our office are great with GIS, and there's a lot more we can do with spatial data. I'll skip ahead, Rebecca. This is just a snapshot of last year's 3% competitive program grant awards. I believe we had 22 in total, and we had just over $124,000 in occupancy tax funding. We were able to get through out really in every corner of the county, supporting projects big and small, again, marketing, events, and projects that enhance or improve or develop new attractions for our visitors. So that's been another successful program, and we have great partners that help us implement this. One project we just wanted to preview to the community, again, utilizing occupancy tax funding again in 2024, as well as some other discretionary funds we had through the Partnership for Economic Growth. We had allocated about $30,000 in total to help the Fair Association conceptualize improvements to their facilities, with the first phase focused really on the visual impacts from Central Avenue and Waldorf Road, really devising some improvements that will really just improve the aesthetic appeal, replacing the fence that's been there since the 40s, main gate improvements, landscaping, signage, flags, et cetera. So we partnered with an engineering firm and the Fair Association to conduct that work, and we're going to be partnering with them on several funding opportunities to hopefully implement at least components of that project next year and beyond. We've touched on this project in the past, but again, a huge success story. Huge investment in downtown Fredonia to revitalize the White Inn. Our department, as well as the IDA, worked really hard on this. That $1.25 million Restore New York award, which again the county is really just a pass-through for. We were the applicant of that. That really helped get the project over the finish line and helped Steve St. George and team commit to taking the project on in the first place. So again, a great asset to downtown Fredonia and a great success story. We'll be closing that grant out.
That's an old
next
picture,
month.
though.
Yeah. Totally different.
And then just to expand briefly, I mentioned, the importance of spatial data and, not only using our county GIS, but there's so much more we can do with additional data and improving efficiency of our work. So our team's really focused on making this tool more effective for us this year and beyond. David?
Thank you, Nate. Mark, would you pass that out? My benchmarks for 2025 are pretty simple and direct. When I was hired in 2014, I was hired to manage the occupancy tax program. And they saw on my resume that I had a lot of infrastructure experience. They said, well, you can do that too. So that's exactly what we've been doing. I think the occupancy tax every 2 years has a new set of rules that's brought forward by New York State. Originally, we could do projects anywhere in the county, which is fine because there are occupancy tax generators like Peak and Peak that contribute a lot. And then they changed the rules. They said, well, you can only do it on our lakes and watersheds, which narrowed the county down to about 35–40% of the land mass. Unfortunate, but, that's where the money gets generated for the most part. I get it. I know that's how it is. It was tough, but we're getting by. And the most recent iteration was we have to balance spending 50% in lake and 50% in the watershed, which has created some difficult challenges, as you probably noticed with the 9 projects that we had to push forward in 2025 because they require a higher level of permitting and they take more time to do. A lot of those are watershed projects. So I would love to turn the 2% program into a 3% program, but that's something I can't do. I think that's something that the legislature has to look at seriously doing. We have an opportunity to do that in another year when the next cycle of occupancy tax state legislation comes around. If you start thinking about it now, it won't be such a shock when you finally get a chance to consider it. We can do some great things with another $500,000 to $700,000 and do them possibly in other areas of the county, like on the Chattacoin, like in French Creek. There's a lot of things we could do if things were changed just a little bit. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the Army Corps of Engineers Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration of Chautauqua Lake. This has been described by some of our stakeholders as the greatest hope for Chautauqua Lake. For years, stakeholders clamored that they wanted to bring an outside expert in with world-class experience, somebody who didn't harbor any preconceived notions or prejudice against different lake maintenance mechanisms and means. We've done that. We're just halfway through the first year. Of course, the federal government is on a different budget cycle than we are. Our first draw on this $101.5 million project, the county share, was $600,000. That was come out of the occupancy tax. Later this year, we're going to be looking to take another $500,000, probably from the lake fund and maybe a little bit from the occupancy tax reserve. It's within our means to do this. It's a heck of a deal, 50-50 with the feds to bring that money in here. But at the end of the day, once the study's done, we'll have an opportunity to do remedial work, to correct the problems that are in the watershed. And those funds could come to us at 65-35, an even better deal than what we're getting right now. And those will be mega projects, big dredging projects, big watershed restoration projects, a lot of big things, a lot of very expensive things. So we're sitting at the table to be able to do that. And I've kind of looped in the Chautauqua Lake Watershed Management Alliance and year 4 of the Jefferson Project in this bullet. Jefferson Project, my gosh, that's putting us on the world stage. Behind Lake George, we're probably the second smartest lake in the country. And that's drawing national attention. And it's giving us the kind of opportunities and resources to do things that just weren't possible a few years ago with partnership with IBM, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institution, and the others. And to be honest with you, it's drawing more investment into Chautauqua Lake, More money was invested in Chautauqua Lake in 2024 than ever before, and we're likely to exceed that in 2025. DEC has some exciting programs that haven't been announced publicly yet, but hopefully will come along, and those wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the leg up that the Jefferson Project's given us. The third bullet I'd like to talk about is the flooding issues on Casadega Lake. It's something that has kind of been out there for a long time, but now we have an opportunity with the fund that the lake, with the resources that the Lake Fund is giving us to get in there and do some work. We've hit the ground running. We have a consultant. The Casadega Lakes Association has a consultant under contract. They've made contact with the DEC. They've had pre-application meetings. And the good news is, it's cold out. It's 0 degrees, and things aren't melting. It's not raining. It's buying us a little bit of time to get some things done. With the amount of snowpack that's on the landscape, when we do get those hard rains, we do get a big melt, there'll be a lot of people in Casadega Lake that are going to be hurting. So we're giving it our best shot, and hopefully everything works out for us. Typically, we manage around 30 water resource-related contracts and agreements, small things that we wouldn't think about, like the United States Geologic Survey. They operate the lake and river gauges. Also, we do things with municipalities, lots of great things. We'll talk a little bit about the Lawson Center in a few minutes. And, I'd like to mention lastly here is in terms of benchmarks is the Lake Erie Management Commission. We do a lot with not too much. We're doing some really great creative things. We co-fund a lot of things. We only have $40K to work with each year, but we're doing some great things. One of the things that we're doing, which you might not think about, is we're working to provide handicap access at the Dunkirk and Barcelona harbors. You ever been to a hotel where they have a chairlift into the pool? You can imagine if you're out on a fishing charter and one of your friends you're fishing with has a heart attack or a stroke. How are you going to get them out of the boat? People get dropped, sometimes on our head. But also there are a lot of people who have disabilities that want to be able to enjoy the lake. So this would be able to allow the harbor master or the marina operator to be able to physically put somebody in a chair, hand them the control, and allow them to move themselves out over the boat and let them in. And we're seeking funding through the foundations and the sportsmen's clubs and those sorts of things. It would probably be a $35,000 effort to get those two in, but I think it'd be well worth it. It's important to be able to provide the general public with good access to Lake Erie because, honestly, if you don't have a boat, it's hard to enjoy it. And this will help get more people out on the water. And I don't want to go into all the little details here because they're kind of boring. And, we've got the Jefferson Project here, which we already touched about. World-class science right here. But I would like to talk a little bit about the Lawson Boatage Heritage Center. Max Picard came to us and said, gosh, we got a problem out there. We don't have quite enough money to handle it on our own. Can you help us? We've got state funding available. We've got funding from the foundations available. We need about $40K to put it over the top. And thanks to the action of this committee and the legislature, we were able to provide those funds. We were up against a tight deadline with getting the work done before the end of the winter, or before winter got too bad, really. And there was an opportunity that maybe we would lose state funding if we didn't get it in before 2025. That's happened. So that's a success story. A lot of people there. The Lawson Center brings a lot of dollars in. If you love old boats and the smell of varnish, that is a really cool place to go. And, also, with the investment we've made with our ARPA funds in lake maintenance equipment, it's allowing us to do some invasive species work collaboratively. We're bringing all sorts of stakeholders together to work on those things. And we passed out this little article from the Post-Journal. I mean, so often you read the Post-Journal, it sounds like the world's coming to an end in Chautauqua Lake. But you look at the headline, getting the job done. And using those ARPA funds, this committee and the legislature allowing us to use those ARPA funds are producing some great outcomes and good value for our stakeholders. So I think 2025 is going to be a great year. Thank you very much.
You do great.
Thank you.
You do great. Thank you
And
for the
then,
presentation.
just real quick, we have an infographic here of, you can read.
Okay, I do have one question, Rebecca. Getting back to the murals and the art that you discussed, would any local artists be considered, or is this something that's going to be put out to bid to artists that come in and, like renowned artists from the country, or are we going to go local?
It'll be an open call to local, regional, and out of the country. It'll be open to anyone.
Okay.
These are large-scale murals, 100 feet by 80 feet,
Mhm.
We're gonna be looking for high-quality, unique stuff, so, it's open to anyone.
And just to be clear on that, there's no county money going into that. It's partnership money that we
Right.
received because the legislature was sort of cold on that
A
idea.
little bit, yeah. Well, it's a
And
chair.
sort of said, okay, we'll try to figure out another way. We think it's important. We'll figure out another way to fund that. And so that's what we're doing.
The question was probably going to be asked, when we get to that point where you're going to do those, I know that was a question we had in the past on murals and other projects, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Larson?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the same approach that we agreed on for their presentation. I'd like to go through my comments and questions without being interrupted. This whole presentation lacks context. Chautauqua County is documented as one of the poorest of the 62 counties in New York State. It's documented by the U.S. Census. Our population declined from 140,000 people in 2000 to 126,000 in 2020. It's documented that our employment declined by about 14,000 people the last 15 years, from about 68,000 down to 56,000. It's documented that our per capita income has declined relative to New York's and relative to the nation as a whole. So when I ran to get back on the county legislature, which I first came on in 1986, economic development was my main motivator. I go through this document, listen to your presentation. On the benchmarks, there's not a single reference to job creation in any of these benchmarks. Our government, including the IDA, and I won't get into the relationship of our county government to its County Industrial Development Agency tonight. We'll save it for another time. But to not acknowledge our situation is a big mistake. The reference to the great things done with ARPA funds, I think we can agree that was a once-in-a-lifetime situation. There is no way that we're going to get $26 million to do with what we want from Washington until the next quasi-depression happens. So we have to be prepared to do good work with our own money. It's hard to talk about housing in this county without taking into account the population decline. There's 14,000 fewer people to house in this county than there was 20 years ago. And I was brought up learning college economics that there was a law of supply and demand. You have 14,000 fewer people in this county, there's going to be less demand for housing. And when there's less demand for housing, some of that housing is going to get run down. Some of those landlords are desperate to rent for a $500 welfare tenant, and then the landlord doesn't take care of the property anymore. Drive around any community. We won't just pick on Jamestown and Dunkirk. Drive around Cell Run, drive around Stockton, drive around Cherry Creek. The consequences of this population decline is obvious everywhere. How do we account for that in what we do? Has our planning department done a study of what are the implications of our population decline? The population decline is not as simple as just saying, well, we're down 14,000 people. What I saw was, by coincidence, we had the same percentage drop of working age, family age people with a percentage increase of those of us over 65 in this county. We're growing older. What does that mean? We need the help of the planning department to deal with these issues. On the planning projects and benchmarks, there's no category of industrial park or business park planning. I think that's a bad omission. The public art, I don't care what government money is going into that. I can think of a lot better uses, and I bet the legislature, well, Mr. Geis very nicely understated the attitude of the 19 legislators about spending $100,000 of county money on some murals. Didn't see the job creation that was likely to result from those murals. Not that quality of life stuff is not important. Quality of life stuff that doesn't lead to any direct jobs still is important, like parks and trails and so forth. But the priority should be on investing county resources and other public states' resources, I don't care whose resources, in rebuilding the economy of this county so there's jobs for young families. I've already commented on countywide housing market and development plan. I'm not totally thrilled with 400 or 500 new units of housing being introduced into a county with a huge population decline and abandoned housing in every community in this county, pretty much. It's interesting to drive the county roads in the rural areas of this county. You will see abandoned homes on every road. The complete streets matter. Given our winter weather, I'm never impressed when somebody decides to try to make art out of our street surfaces. Right out here, I think it was a state-done project, whenever they put brick crosswalks up against blacktop and those materials move differently with freezing and thawing cycle, it looks pretty the first year it's put in. After that, it's a pain in the neck and a hazard. Painting the road, this intersection in Fredonia, I'm not impressed that makes it into the presentation. Again, on the economic development 2025 benchmarks, job creation is no benchmark in a community that's lost so many jobs. And before I get accused of being the Debbie Downer, yes, Cummins engine, $400 and some million investment will result in 200 new jobs. Wonderful. Wells investing $400 million in Dunkirk on the ice cream plant will create 200 new jobs. Wonderful. But anyone with a memory, Fredonia alone, with Carriage House closing, lost 500 jobs. So 200 at Wells, 200 at Cummins, we're still short of the loss from one industry. The same conglomerate got rid of Petrie Baking in Silver Creek, 200 full-time jobs, gone. To my knowledge, virtually none of them have been replaced. So job creation that is not a benchmark for economic development, I don't understand. Happily for Dave, I have no comments about the water.
I'm happy too, thank you.
So that's all I have, and this really ties in with the effort we hope, I think we will try as a committee by June to give some objectives, goals, and measurables of those goals so that we have some input on where this $300 million county government goes. And we should have some input. For example, when the legislature 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, gave $5 million of Joe Biden's ARPA money to the IDA to basically do what it saw fit. I just think as a county legislator, when you give away $5 million, you have some oversight responsibility. That's just my view. So hopefully this committee will have some of its own concepts, objectives, goals, and measurables that the county executive can use in the 26 budget planning. Thank you.
Through. Done. I just want to thank you guys very much. It was an awesome presentation, and I want to thank you personally for doing what you do, and what you've been doing, and what you're going to continue to do in the future. I want to thank you personally, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes, sir.
And I understand my colleague from Jamestown's passion. As we continue to beat this dog and beat this dog and beat this dog, you provide a lot of information with a small staff, in my opinion. Your accolades, your successes are documented. I understand this point of view with job creation, but could you provide this committee information as to why, in your professional opinion, in your different disciplines, what are the other counties done? How are they impacted about population loss, job creation, and what is the root cause for job loss or population decline? And I know, because I do a little bit of traveling, it's jobs that can provide a livable wage, affordable housing, adequate housing, the quality of that housing. And you know, look at, for example, the city of Dunkirk just raised taxes 87% within their municipality. Village Fredonia is proposing possibly 50 to 70% in village taxes. We look at Village Fredonia water problems. What does that equate to? That equates to, what is Fredonia State going to do when parents want to send their kids to college and they've had five instances where they've had to boil water alerts? What about those large manufacturers that are in the juicing business, manufacturing of products related to growing of grapes in Chautauqua County? They don't have an adequate water supply, safe and adequate water supply. So I want to know or hear from you folks, why is that decline? And that's maybe some of that I do believe is out of your control and our control. I would just like to see some of those. What are those contributing factors? Why
I mean,
there's
you just answered your own question.
So
You
I
named-
agree.
You named
That's
10 things.
That's what it
that
all is.
contribute,
That-
But it's way bigger than that.
It is.
Do you think we're alone and we're unique in this
No, we're
county
not.
with this issue?
Not at all.
I mean, we're a victim of really a global economy and, you know, what moves around and, you know, there's so many factors. What you're basically asking for is something that would
We all know
be-
exists.
Would be this huge.
No,
mean,
I know
can't
what
even
be,
imagine
but
it.
I
My
mean,
head
can
would explode even trying
sure.
to figure
Well,
that
I
out.
agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And my idea is to take some of my colleagues' concerns and comments and can we boil that down to some generalities, buckets of why we lost population over a certain period of time. And I'm not concerned with what you folks are absolutely amazing. And that is no argument with my colleague Fred, none whatsoever. But I do believe you deserve credit and where credit is due, and it should be publicly acknowledged that this group of people, under yourself and our county executive, under our chairman, under different people. And so I applaud you for what you've done, what you continue to do. You come in here, I believe you're prepared to come in here. However, I do agree with Mr. Larson. I think you have that information. You have that data.
What data?
Well, what Fred's talking about is some of the actual job creation numbers. I believe you have the information that he's looking for. At the end of the day, I think this is a great conversation. And Mark, you may be taking this wrong, but I am publicly acknowledging, in my opinion, the excellent work you do with, I don't believe, a large enough staff, how you leverage funds between the state, federal, and county government. What's going on in our lakes and our watersheds is absolutely amazing. The planning, the snowmobile, the ag districts, the way that you work with other municipalities, you're making those improvements. And it's important that we see what you've accomplished and what you're working on. And so that's just a hats off to what you're doing.
If I can respond to that, you know, asking the question, how many jobs are you gonna create next year? It's impossible to know. It all depends on what happens in the economy. Are the tariffs gonna be in place? Maybe we'll get more, maybe we'll get less. I mean, it's.
Too many unknowns.
That's something, throw out a number, you know, that is not something, and we're gonna talk about it more next month.
No,
don't wanna get
I
into
think
it
this
right
is
now,
a
but
great
that kind of
opportunity to
thing-
discuss that.
What, do I take an average of what we did over the last 10 years and say, okay, here's the average of what we did over the last 10 years annually? This is our number. I mean, it's impossible to know. That's why I'm pushing back a little bit here, because I don't want to be, you throw out a number and next year, maybe you do great. Okay, great. Maybe you don't reach that number. Oh, okay, now we're doing something wrong. And it's really way outside of us. We're doing everything we can do here at a local level, I feel. Maybe if we have more money, more staff, or more, maybe we can do more. But with what we have, I think we're doing what we can. And again, we'll talk about that in March.
Okay, that's
I really
fine.
don't want to get into it
No,
today.
I agree.
But one last thing. The Economic Development Division, under the Planning Department, their mission really isn't to create jobs directly. Okay, that can be an outcome of some of the other planning type work that they're doing, but it's not the Economic Development Division with one person and a staffer. That's really sort of, you know, it's the IDA, which is sort of leading that charge. And again, the IDA is not part of the county. It's
Right, they're
a
not.
division of-
And the IDA doesn't create jobs, it supports companies that
Yeah,
create jobs.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We're not creating them, so we're supporting companies with every tool that we have so that they can either locate here and create jobs or expand what they currently have. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that, you know, we meet with them, they know. Again, I don't want to get into.
Right,
it.
right.
We'll talk about it next. we'll talk about it
Mr.
next.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, on this colloquy, I want to compliment Mark Geis that over the last year, roughly, he was candid with us and the public that one reason we don't have more jobs is because the county had run out of shovel-ready sites for business. Mark said repeatedly in public that there were people interested in coming here, building here. We had no place to offer them. That was the rationale of millions of dollars into Ripley. So to say that these things have been, some of them out of our control, of course. Some of the things are out of control of General Motors at this point. They might have tariffs on all their million trucks coming from Mexico. Who knows? Those things are out of our control. But the absence of shovel-ready sites, that is under our control. And the fact, simple fact, between 2005 and buying Ripley, not 1 acre of industrial park land was added to this county's inventory by county government or the IDA. The 60 acres in the industrial park was purchased back by the county in 2018 from Bush Industries, but that land was already in the industrial park. So the good news of Ripley is Mark Geis decided, was convinced, that if you don't have shovel-ready sites, you're not going to get new business. I agree 100%. And so, no, you can't promise how many jobs are going to be created at Ripley. But we have consultants that have made projections. If the projections are not met, will there be critics? Always are. Our first county executive, Joe Gerasi, he acquired the land and developed the first industrial park in the county, the South County Industrial Park. In one of his re-election campaigns, the other side bought a full page in the Post-Journal back when the Post-Journal had a circulation of like 30,000 papers. Full page ad of a vacant land in that industrial park. And so what a waste. Well, a couple of years after that, Bush Industries established their world headquarters on that industrial land. No, you can't guarantee how many jobs are going to be created. But with all due respect, if you took the average of the last 14 years, you would be projecting 1,000 job a year loss in Chautauqua County. I don't think anybody would want to do that. The question is, how do we stop that decline? And you have a goal. And I've talked to our planning department. Help us understand. If our goal is simply 500 new manufacturing type jobs, how many acres of industrial park land would we have to acquire to even make that possible? Probably 100 or more. But we need help from our staff. And I can't let this go. When I walked out of this building December 31, 2005, my last day as county attorney, do you know how many employees the County Industrial Development Agency had between 1972 and 2005? Anybody? 0. The staff for the IDA all those years, so from 72, 82, 92, was that 28 years? No, 30, help me, 72 to 05. 33 years? The IDA had no employees from the very start, with David Dawson and all the way through. They were county employees, as Mr. Geis is, and they got a stipend to be the executive director of the IDA. All of the staff work for over 30 years was done by the County Planning and Economic Development Department on this floor. And those people brought in Cummins Engine, and you could go on and on and on, great accomplishments. So the idea that the problem with county government or the IDA is there are not enough employees, as a good fiscal conservative, I want to try to nip that one in the bud tonight. But I credit Mark Geis. Somebody stepped forward and said, we have no shovel-ready sites, and because of that, we're missing out on opportunity to bring people in here. So I want to make that, credit you with that admission, and then you set about to remedy it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments for the board here? Seeing none, I want to thank you again very much for your time and for all the efforts that you do.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourn?
Aye.
Sorry.
You're all back, that's all.
And then it's over 12 months.
Oh, be careful.